Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perticchese, and thank you for joining me. As always, Week 10 of the college football season in the books, Week 9 and the NFL trade deadline in the books. Here at Saturday to Sunday, we are going to break it all down, all the ramifications from a very active NFL trade deadline day, the impact on the 2026 and the 2027 NFL draft, the impact on your dynasty leagues. We're going to go through all of it tonight and talk about everything that has happened over the last couple of days from Week 10 of the college football season, Week 9 of the NFL season, and then the stuff that happened today with the NFL trade deadline. Let's jump right into it and hit on the NFL draft report for Week 10 of the college football season. Not a lot that I really thought impacted or moved the needle in terms of draft stock, in terms of draft capital, in terms of stock rising or stock falling. But let's start where we always do, with the quarterback position. And I think the biggest performance of the week goes to Arch Manning. And again, we've had this discussion since the first week of the season, and we've checked in on Arch every single week this season. But what you saw that Texas Vanderbilt game from this past week, Arch was 25 of 33, 328 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This was the performance that we thought we were going to get in and week out from Arch Manning. And it still puts into the perspective that while I don't believe he's going to be a part of the 2026 NFL draft, the talent is still there. This is still going to be a guy that is going to be an early pick in an NFL draft. I just think it's more 2027 than it is 2026. But we realize, whether it's my podcast, whether it's so many other bigger, well-known podcasts, we are in the business of weekly takes. We are in the business of dissecting every drive, every play, every single week, and making statements about him and talking about stock up and stock down. It's a long season. Every single quarterback in particular gets picked apart when they're talking about they're highly regarded, and then the season starts and every single thing they do is analyzed at a deep level, in and out. And I think this year is the perfect perspective. So many of the guys that we thought were going to be at the top of the quarterback class for the 2026 NFL draft are not going to be at the top of the quarterback class for the 2026 class. Some of those guys might stick around, and we see them again at the top of the 2027 class. Some of them might fall, and we never really hear from them again in terms of being a big-time prospect. But it is a long process. The season is long. The pre-draft months are long. And I think we have to do a really good job of trying to keep that in the perspective. And I keep coming back to it. Arch is not going to come out in 2026. But even if he does, I still think with the tools, the pedigree, the name brand, there would be a team that would take him pretty high. Even if it would be, we're going to sit him behind a year. Even if it was a team that has a current franchise quarterback that's a little bit on the older side, I still think he would go high. Because, again, you can't teach some of the things that he possesses. You know he's someone who's got his head on his shoulders right. He's grown up in football. He's got the right supporting environment. So there's still things about his game. And then he puts out a performance this past week, and it's his best performance of the year. And if he stacks that now a couple games to close out this year, the buzz will start to build again towards him being the first pick in the 2027 NFL draft. And that's just kind of the cycle we are on here. If we keep this to the 2026 NFL draft, I do think Fernando Mendoza continues to check the box week in and week out. Indiana rolled this week. Mendoza wasn't asked to do much, but he showed 201 yards, a touchdown. Indiana took care of business. At this point now, something pretty drastic, I think, would have to change for me not to think Mendoza is going to be QB1 in this class and potentially the first pick in the draft, depending on if it's a quarterback needy team or not, or they pivot to a trade. I do think that's where this is heading with Mendoza. Linares Sellers this past week, 16 of 30, 180 yards and 1 touchdown. Sellers is one of those really interesting case studies. I think he's going to end up staying in school. Does he transfer? Who knows? But if he does declare, it goes back to there's not a lot of prospects with the physical traits, size, frame, strength, arm talent, playmaking ability that possesses those traits. So a team would probably sell them into sellers of maybe a first-round pick, maybe late first, maybe early second, but a team would probably sell themselves on the upside and the traits if Linares Sellers decided to come out. Cade Klubnik of Clemson for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is another guy. He was like the number 1 quarterback at ESPN site for this upcoming season. Didn't go as many expected, but there's still traits there. There's still dual threat ability. There's still arm talent. There's still athleticism. And he continues to have these glimpses where he puts it together. And those glimpses are going to be what NFL team tries to sell themselves on. And even though where some people might have thought he had fallen completely off the radar, that might not necessarily be the case with some of these guys. There was a reason why they were in the preseason before the season started, thought of as top 10 picks, thought of as potential first-round quarterbacks. If you have the traits, if you have the athleticism, the arm talent, the enough height, even though that's not as deterrent if you're on the smaller side now, but as long as you're not an outlier, if you check off those boxes, teams are going to be intrigued with you. We know the NFL has a quarterback problem. We know teams are constantly looking for an upgrade at the quarterback position, and they bet on traits and they see what happens. Because sometimes it works out, other times someone could have everything and it doesn't work out, right? We've seen that in both perspectives for sure. If we take this to the running back position, again, every week we just check in on them, but Jeremiah Love continues to be head and shoulders the RB in this class. 17 carries, 136 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I don't know if there's going to be another draft class that the gap between RB1 and RB2 is ever as wide as this draft class is going to be. Because I think Jeremiah Love's got a real chance to go in the middle of round 1, 15 to 18, let's say, 15 to 20. I really don't know when we're going to see another running back come off the board. I think if people really stuck to their draft boards, it might be like the next running back comes off the board in like the early 4th round. And I don't think that'll happen. But on talent evaluation, I do think there could be that wide of a gap. And every single week, Jeremiah Love continues to show how wide that gap is, with no one else really even close to the proximity of being RB2 or RB3. This is like this big cohort of other running backs who are going to go somewhere, I think, early round 4 through like middle of round 5 or 6. And that's going to make up like the next group of guys. We'll see. I still think someone will probably sneak in to the 2nd round, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of people have it in terms of, especially if they really kind of build their boards looking at previous years. Because, I mean, last year, there were people on the fence about whether Cam Scatterbo was even a day 2 running back. There's not even another running back in this draft class that's even on the same stratosphere as Cam Scatterbo as a college prospect. Forget about what he did before he got hurt in the NFL. So there's so many guys that if you evaluate what your draft grades were on past running backs, there should be almost no other running backs that have a day 2 grade. Everybody else should be more of a day 3 grade, whether it's early day 3, mid day 3, late day 3, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's Jeremiah Love, top 15 player, top 10 player in this upcoming draft class. So the gap is as wide as it's ever been. I will say, as the years went on, as I've done more of these episodes every single week, the wide receiver class has started to look and feel like a deeper class than what I gave it credit for. I still don't think we have the elite high-end talents. I don't think we have anybody that profiles what Malik Neighbors did when he was coming out, what Marvin Harrison did when he was coming out, what even Rome Odunze did when he was coming out. We got to wait one more year. And then we get Jeremiah Smith, and we get Ryan Williams, and we get Coleman. And some of those guys are going to for sure profile like those alpha stud number 1 potential upside ceiling wide receivers. But what we do have in this draft class is going to be a class that I think kind of blends together what we had last year with a guy like Ted McMillan, and then what we had that draft class when we had Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, that group. And I think that's what we're going to get here, a mix like that. Because, again, this past week, Carnell Tate, 5 catches, 124 yards and a touchdown. I think Carnell Tate ends up going probably in the 20 to 32 range, if not there, early second round. Knows how to get open, creates late separation, uses his body really well. Length, catch radius, ability to adjust, that's how, ball skills and body control. That's how Carnell Tate wins. But we've seen a lot of guys who weren't great separators become really successful NFL wide receivers. So I think Carnell Tate is going to be one of those guys that is going to be in that 20 to 40 range when it comes to the 2026 NFL draft. Antonio Williams, he was looked at as a round 1 caliber wide receiver before the year started. Hurt early in the year. Clemson had offensive struggles. Took him a while to get going at Williams once he got back from injury. But this past week, 10 catches, 142 yards, and 1 touchdown. There was a reason Antonio Williams was looked at as a top-tier wide receiver prospect before the season started. If he closes out this year well, I think he could put himself back in the mix as being a potential round 1 to early or mid-round 2 pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Chris Bell, I've been talking about him since the summer when Dane Brugler put him on my radar for me. Bell's going to go, I think, in round 1. The size, the frame, the athleticism, the speed, the tactical value, the physicality that he brings. I've said it. He looks like part A.J. Brown and part Hakeem Nicks, or a more athletic, faster Hakeem Nicks, if we don't want to put him on the A.J. Brown. But let's not forget, Hakeem Nicks was taken before A.J. Brown. Hakeem Nicks was a late first-round pick. A.J. Brown was an early second-round pick. So in terms of evaluating them, what they were when they were coming out, take out the NFL success they had, and I think a guy like Chris Bell is going to be looked at similarly to how Hakeem Nicks was looked at, similarly to how A.J. Brown was looked at when they were prospects. Zachariah Branch, he just continues. The crescendo is building. This is who we thought Zachariah Branch was going to be when he was a big-time recruit to USC, when he exploded onto the scenes as a true freshman. But now we're seeing that speed, that versatility, the offensive playmaker, the big playability, dangerous weapon in terms of the return game, offensive weapons, get him in touches, end around sweeps, all that stuff, but could also take the top off as a vertical slot. Zachariah Branch is going to be a top 40 to 50 pick in this draft class. I am starting to have little doubt with that. The big playability that he offers, he fits anyone. No, is he a true alpha number wide receiver? No. But every team needs more playmakers. Whether you have a good offense or a great offense, you're looking to keep it great. If you're good, you're trying to go from good to great. If you're bad, you're trying to look for a piece that offers that big playability to be an instant offense, to help put 7 on the board, to help your quarterback. So he fits anybody's team. Anybody could use a player like Zachariah Branch because he's such a intriguing offensive weapon that every team is looking for more of them and more versatility to their offense and more playmaking and explosiveness. And Zachariah Branch offers that. A couple other interesting guys that I think a little bit later in the board, round 3, day 3. Eugene Wilson out of Florida, former big-time recruit, 9 catches, 121 yards and a touchdown this week. He's another guy that I think could be a very effective inside-outside Z slot, can get vertical, can make people miss. And then Nick Harbor, he is the discount version of DK Metcalf. Physical freak, still developing in terms of ball skills, the hands, but the speed and at the size and frame that he possesses and the ability to win vertically would intrigue teams with a player like Nick Harbor. A couple other guys that I want to mention. Actually, just one guy, the tight end, Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt, 7 catches, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, when tight ends are putting up numbers like this, we need to make sure we're checking in on them week in and week out. We saw what Harold Fannin did last year. We see how that's translated. These tight ends who are effective pass-catching weapons at the college level often are effective pass-catching weapons at the NFL as well. They just have a ability to uncover, ability to separate, ability to create late separation, use that ability to put up production if they are being put in a position to be successful. And I think this tight end class has got some intrigue to it. I think we're going to see maybe, I know we're not going to see many running backs in the top 100. I do think we could see maybe 4 or 5 tight ends in the top 100. And then if not, then a couple more right in the early portion of round 4 if they don't sneak into the top 100. So there it is for this week, NFL Draft Report. I told you it wasn't a very thorough one, but I did want to hit on some of those prospects I just talked about. Let's talk about the NFL trade deadline, because it was a big, active NFL trade deadline. There was all different types of trades. There were trades that were going to impact dynasty and fantasy football. There were trades that were going to impact the 2026 NFL draft. There were trades that were going to impact the 2027 NFL draft. So I would say the 2 most surprising ones were the Jets trading Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts for 26 and 27 first and AD Mitchell. Let's start there. That's a lofty price for the Indianapolis Colts to give up for Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner has not been nearly as good as he was when he first entered the NFL. I think he is still a very good player in the NFL. I do not think he is an elite cornerback right now. I'm not saying he can't get back to that form, but I do not think right now Sauce Gardner is an elite cornerback. I think he's a very good to great corner. I do not think he's an elite Patrick Surtain type level cornerback. To give up 2 first-round picks, they had obviously soured on AD Mitchell. They weren't going to get much for AD Mitchell. Maybe a team would have given them a 5th or 6th round pick. So I'm not going to put a lot of value on AD Mitchell, even though he was a former 2nd-round pick. We'll talk about him more momentarily. But you don't see a lot of players get traded for 2 first-round picks. This is just as good, if not better, a package from the Colts than what the Cowboys got from Micah Parsons. And to me, 32 out of 32 teams would choose Micah Parsons over Sauce Gardner without hesitation. The impact of a pass rusher, an elite pass rushing edge, far supersedes what Sauce Gardner brings to the table, who's a good corner, is not a shutdown completely corner. Maybe he was as a rookie, has not been that level of shutdown corner since. We're not talking prime Deion Sanders or prime Darrelle Revis. But they paid what Green Bay paid for Micah Parsons. So I think for the Jets, I think it was a no-brainer move. You get a 26 first and then a 27 first. The Colts are playing great football right now. But Daniel Jones kind of imploded last week. Even if the Colts make the playoffs, are they good enough? Is Daniel Jones going to go beat Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen in the 2nd round or the conference championship? If Baltimore makes it, are they going to beat Baltimore in round 1? I'm not sure about that. So I don't think it's going to be pick 30 to 32 from the Colts. I think it's a much greater chance that it's like pick 23 to 25. And then what about next year? Everything went right for the Colts this year. But what if Daniel Jones turns back into who Daniel Jones was with the Giants all those years? What if that pick turns into a top 10 pick next year? If you're telling me that the Jets are going to get a pick this year in the 20s, a pick next year maybe in potentially a top 15, or even if it's top 20, and take a flyer on AD Mitchell, that's a great trade for the Jets. Not a good trade. It's a great trade for the Jets. I think it's a very aggressive, bold trade for the Colts. I think they're going to maybe have some regret about that 27 first. 26 first, I get them going all in. I would have tried really hard if I was the Colts GM to make this deal happen without that 27 first. Maybe it would have been, maybe aggressively make it a 27 second, maybe even throw in a 28 third, but I would have tried to keep that 27 first if possible. Because if things go sideways, that 27 first, I still much ready to say, they don't need a quarterback long term. But when you trade 2 first-round picks, you're kind of saying we're set at the quarterback position. Green Bay traded for Micah Parsons, but they look at it as they could do that because they can work around it. They have their franchise quarterback. The Colts don't. I mean, it took a flyer on a cheap contract to Daniel Jones. And now we're like 8 games into his Colts career. Or 9 games into his Colts career. Are we ready to say that like he's the guy? This move says to me that they think he is. So it was aggressive. The second big move of the day was the Jets also trading Quentin Williams to the Cowboys for Mozzie Smith, former first-round pick, a 2026 second-round pick, and a 2027 first-round pick. Now, unlike what I just said about the Colts trying to keep their 27th pick, I think the Cowboys did pretty well here, making it the 27 first instead of the 26 first. Dallas's record right now is poor. They could look, and I'm sure they will be very aggressive in the offseason, knowing that they don't have their 27 first. So keeping their 26 first, just in case this year continues to spiral, which could be a top 10 pick, I think was a good move for the Cowboys here. I think it's weird when your record is what it is to trade a 26, a second, and a first. But let's not lose sight of the fact that Quentin Williams is still a dominant top 5-ish defensive tackle in the NFL. Those guys are hard to find. The Quentin Williams types, the Jeffrey Simmons types, the Dexter Lawrence types, those guys are hard to find. For the Jets, I definitely like this trade a little bit less than the Sauce Gardner trade, but I get it. They're going to do a whole rebuild. I'm not sure why Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are on the roster still. I find it hard to believe that nobody was willing to offer a third-round pick for Breece Hall, but the Jets have now set themselves up with having 2 first-round picks in 2026, 2 second-round picks in 2026, and then 3 2027 first-round picks. Their own, the Cowboys, and the Colts. So 3 firsts in 2027, 2 firsts in 2026, and 2 seconds in 2026. And probably on the trajectory of having the first pick in the draft. So whether it's this year, they go for the quarterback if they fall in love with one, whether it's Mendoza, or they use this year to rebuild up parts of the defense. They continue to make sure the offensive line is good, which it's a pretty solid offensive line already. A lot of investments have been put in there, even though the results haven't been good. They need those guys to step up. And then if they don't go quarterback this year, they're sitting on 3 first-round picks, and they're not first-round picks from like juggernaut teams. It's not inconceivable that in 2027, the Jets have 3 top 15 top 15 picks in the draft. I think the Jets will be terrible in 2027, so they'll have their own, which will probably be like top 5. I think it's possible the Colts and the Cowboys are not playoff teams, so they could have 3 picks in like the top 15 or so. So they are positioned, if they don't get the quarterback in 26 that they love, they will have the ammunition to get whatever quarterback pretty much they want in the 2027 class. So I think it was a good move. Surprising that they completely waved the white flag. But if you're talking about full reset, full rebuild, I think this was the move. I just wish they would have went all in, gotten a 3rd-round pick for Breece Hall. I find it hard to believe that no one offered it, but maybe they didn't because he's a running back last year of his contract. I get it, maybe. But this is a weak running back class. The team should have been willing to give that and try to pay him. And then I wonder if in the offseason, this is going to take a couple years to rebuild. You're going to be able to keep Garrett Wilson happy. There's already been moments in New York that it looked like he was already wearing out his welcome here. I wouldn't be surprised in the offseason if they turn around and if they can get a contending team to give up a late first-round pick for Garrett Wilson, or another team to give up like a 2 and a 4 or 2 and a 5 or something along those lines, and they move on from Garrett Wilson as well. I think that could definitely be in the cards. The fantasy football implication trades that happened over the last 24 hours is Jacoby Myers was traded to Jacksonville for a 4 and a 6, and Rashid Shaheed was traded to Seattle for a 4 and a 5. Let's talk about the implications. In Jacksonville, Myers steps in the rest of the year, and I think will play a significant role for their team. We'll see about Travis Hunter returning this year. If he does, do they let him play both ways so much? Do they maybe just let him, play offense full-time and no defense, or they let him play defense full-time and no offense? What's the impact of that? We just saw Parker Washington have a great week. Anybody thought maybe he was going to be a usable fantasy piece for the rest of the year? I think that ship has sailed. Maybe we'll see about this week and how quickly Jacoby Myers can get up to speed. So he might sneak one more week out of Parker Washington. But we'll see. If Jacoby Myers plays well, does Jacksonville think about bringing him back as a third wide receiver there with Travis Hunter, with Brian Thomas? If things continue to look bad with Brian Thomas, do they try to get out where they could still get back a decent return, keep Jacoby Myers, and have Travis Hunter and Jacoby Myers as their 1-2 options next year? So there's different paths that this can play out for Jacksonville. On the Raiders side, this is a real opportunity for Jack Bash. Because since they drafted Jack Bash, it always felt like him and Jacoby Myers' skill set kind of overlapped each other in terms of how they won. The positions on the field where they won were similar. So I think this is a scenario now where Jack Bash should be playing a lot down the stretch here. Know what level of player he can be as you're building this offense around Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers. Is Jack Bash a number 3, number 4 wide receiver? Could he be a really good number 2 wide receiver? Is he just a slot-only guy? They need to know what Jack Bash is before they figure out what they're going to do with their wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 positions. In terms of Rashid Shaheed, a 4 and a 5 is a pretty lofty price, I will say, for Seattle, but he complements what they want and what they need tremendously. Complements Jackson Smith and Najigba. If Cooper Kupp's got anything left, compliments Cooper Kupp. They did not have compliments Torrey Horton, who's not a field stretching vertical component. So to me, this sets up where it's a perfect landing spot. Darnold throws a good vertical ball. This is a great landing spot for Shaheed. This is a great fit with the rest of the wide receivers on that roster. On the New Orleans side, I think Devontae Vele, who they gave up like a 4th-round pick for before the season started, I think he's the guy that gets a real opportunity here to maybe emerge and see what he could offer down the home stretch of this season. So there it is, NFL trade deadline discussion, a lot of ramifications. Let's go through a quick NFL rookie report and dynasty report for week 9 of the NFL season. Rookie report will start there. Jackson Dart, even in a losing effort, still continues to produce production and show glimpses of greatness. 24 of 33, 191 yards and 2 touchdowns, 8 carries, 56 yards rushing and a touchdown. I think the Giants got their guy. I mean, you watch him play, there's a lot of young Mahomes-like moments to his game. He's not playing with much there, but he looks like he's a guy who's going to be a high-end fantasy piece, and also a big-time potential franchise quarterback if the Giants can get the rest of their situation resolved. Cam Ward continues his struggles. I do not think that's going to stop this year. I believe in the player, but I think until next year rolls around, it's going to be hard to really evaluate Cam Ward and how he looks until new regime, new coach in there, new regime, playmaking wide receivers are added for him for the offseason, and then we can start to see. I think this year, you hope that he doesn't lose too much confidence. You hope to see some glimpses here or there of the player who went number 1 overall, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of consistent production. At the running back position, Kyle Monangai steps in for an injured DeAndre Swift and rushes for 176 yards. Outstanding performance. Monangai was one of those guys that if this was a normal draft class, Monangai would have been like a round 5 pick. But this was such a great running back class that Monangai fell to, I believe it was round 7. But he had a lot of fans in the industry. Connor Rogers was a big fan of Kyle Monangai, and I like Connor Rogers' work a lot. there were other people that were really in to Monangai of being a guy who could step in and be a part of a committee. And I think Monangai has shown that in glimpses this year, and then really show what type of runner he could be in the performance this past week. RJ Harvey continues to make an impact in limited opportunities. While he only had 2 rushes on the ground, he had 5 catches, 51 yards, and another touchdown. So RJ Harvey has now found the end zone 4 times in the last 2 weeks, showing that big playability that he offers. I think Sean Payton would be foolish not to start to incorporate him a little bit more as the year goes on. So I think stock up on RJ Harvey. Woody Marks continues to see similar. He has not completely iced out Nick Chubb yet. But again, I think that's Woody Marks' game. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that is the guy. I think he's going to be part of the backfield committee, and we're seeing that. Ashton Jeanty this past week, 42 yards rushing, but did have 5 catches, 47 yards, and a touchdown. I like to see that they're getting Jeanty involved in the passing game. Not so much as last year in college, but the year before, he was one of the best pass-catching running backs in all of college football. It is a huge part of his game. It needs to be a huge part of his game, especially as right now Vegas needs to fix that offensive line, fix the quarterback position before we might see the best of Jeanty in terms of the ground game. Travion Henderson had an opportunity to be the lead guy for New England this week. With a Ramondre injury, he had 18 touches. He had 55 yards rushing, 32 yards receiving. Still not seeing that big playability. No word on what's going on with Ramondre, so we might get a real opportunity to see Travion Henderson down the stretch here, how much he could handle. I thought Bashal Tutin coming out of the bye was going to maybe get more opportunity for the Jaguars. He did find the end zone, but still only had 9 carries. I thought that was going to maybe be more of an even timeshare with him and Travis Etienne. I still think we can get there by the end of the year. And then if we turn this over to the pass catchers, the main name I want to bring up there is Colston Loveland. We've been waiting for this breakout performance. Well, it happens this week. 6 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this tight end class is got the potential to go down as maybe the greatest of all time. And it's not just hyperbole. When you think about Tyler Warren and what he's already done, when you think about how quickly Oronde Gadsden has developed his game and the impact he's having in the pass game and where how he's looked at in terms of like dynasty leagues, then Colston Loveland, I think it's just a matter of when. And then there's been so many. Mason Taylor's had moments this year. Harold Fannin has looked great. Ferguson in bits and pieces looks like a guy who's going to be a player. Elijah Arroyo has shown glimpses. If Arroyo and Taylor become who I think they're going to be, with Fannin, with Gadsden, with Loveland, and with Warren, far and away it's going to be the greatest tight end class in history. And that's not even saying that anybody else might not emerge or Ferguson might emerge. Just some of those guys, like we're going to have the capability to have a potential handful of guys that become tight end ones in fantasy football just from this draft class. That is a wild proposition for a tight end class. It just shows you how great the running last year's class was, minus the quarterbacks. The running backs were great. The tight ends were great. Receivers were solid. Quarterback was what was lacking. Maybe Jackson Dart could turn the narrative if he could become a legit superstar. If we take this to a quick Dynasty Fantasy Report for this week, stock up on Sam Darnold. We talked about him a little bit with the trade before of them getting Rashid Shaheed. But I thought maybe Jalen Milroe was going to get an opportunity by the end of the year. This is Sam Darnold's team. He looks great. He's fully now, I think, on the Baker Mayfield redemption tour, where Baker Mayfield is now a legitimate franchise quarterback, and he's going to be that for a while once he finally got there. Darnold ended up through a lot of places after he left the Jets. I think Seattle's going to be his long-term home now. He's still very young. He's got a lot of tools. This offense fits him well. We saw how productive he was in Minnesota last year. Now we're seeing him be super productive in Seattle. So stock up on Sam Darnold if you were nervous that maybe he was going to be a placeholder for Jalen Milroe and Milroe was going to get a shot. I think that ship has sailed. This is Sam Darnold's team. I think it's going to be his team for a while. I know the contract, I think, was only a 2-year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this year, they tack on some more years. I think he's going to be there for a while. The tight end position, the reemergence of Brock Bowers, if you forgot about how elite he was, 12 catches, 127 yards, and 3 touchdowns from a tight end quickly showed why he's with Tyler Warren, Trey McBride as the top 3 tight ends in Dynasty. That level of upside is why Bowers should be number 1. And I know Tyler Warren's been great. And I said a couple of weeks ago, you can make the argument for Tyler Warren to be the first tight end in Dynasty. But for me, it stayed Bowers. It's going to stay Bowers because Bowers has that level of upside. And I'm not saying Tyler Warren can't do that. I just think Tyler Warren's a more complete tight end, that Bowers could get these games where he is just pilfered target after target after target, like he's an alpha true number 1 wide receiver. Also, I think stock up on Dalton Kincaid. This past week, 6 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. He's starting to emerge. Just remember, this was a guy, a very athletic pass-catching tight end who was taken in round 1 of the NFL draft. He looked good at times during the rookie year. Last year, a little bit of a step backwards. But he's doing this on a team that uses the other tight ends who are better blockers a lot. But when Kincaid is on the field, he is targeted a lot. So it wasn't that long ago after his rookie year, Dalton Kincaid was looked at as like the tight end 4 or tight end 5 in Dynasty. And then it fell all the way to like tight end 12 to 14 last offseason. I think we're pushing him back in the mix to be a top 10-ish tight end. And that's only even top 10 because there's so many good young tight ends all of a sudden. But I think stock is definitely up on Dalton Kincaid. Tucker Kraft, I just had talked about him not long ago that he should be number 4 in people's tight end ranks. Suffers a torn ACL out the year. Real buzzkill there with Tucker Kraft. I will say I was a big Luke Musgrave fan coming out of college football, coming out of the draft. There's a lot of upside, a lot of athleticism. There were times during his rookie year that Musgrave looked great. Then he suffered an injury, Kraft emerged, and that's kind of the way it's been. I think Musgrave could be pretty good here. So I'm excited to kind of see him, and I think Tucker Kraft will be the long-term guy there in Green Bay. This is an opportunity for Musgrave to put himself on the map as a guy that, he's got another year in Green Bay, could find himself where maybe a team trades for him in the offseason. Probably not, because Kraft will see when he can come back. But I think Musgrave could be that guy on a second contract. We start to see a real opportunity to emerge as a fantasy factor and more of a real-life NFL factor. So I will say stock up on Luke Musgrave. If you can buy him cheap, I would buy him cheap right now to see how this plays out the rest of this year and into the potentially start of next year. At the wide receiver position, I'm going to say stock up on 3 under-the-radar guys. A.D. Mitchell, we talked about him in the trade before. The Jets are going to give him an opportunity here. They don't have much there at the wide receiver position. I think within 2 weeks of him being there, he's going to get a real opportunity to play most of the game as their number 2 wide receiver and see if they can get something out of him on top of the 2 first-round picks. Without A.D. Mitchell there, that just solidifies the role for Alex Pierce, who had his best game of his career or season, I would say, last week. So I think stock up on Alex Pierce a little bit, and he could probably be had very cheap. And then Christian Watson, already back from his torn ACL. We know the big playability that he offers. He's way down Dynasty wide receiver ranks, but I'll say stock up on Christian Watson. It's not like Marcus Golden has emerged in Green Bay. It's not like Dontavius Wicks has emerged. So Green Bay still in that wide receiver, committee type approach. I think Christian Watson probably right there with Marcus Golden as the most pure talent of any receiver on the team. And he's going to be a guy that's always going to be in demand. Even so, if he leaves Green Bay, team's going to be looking for that explosive, take the top off defense, and he can maybe get put into a situation where they even feature him more. So I think A.D. Mitchell, Alex Pierce, Christian Watson, I think you could probably buy all of them really, really cheap right now. I would be intrigued to get any of them on my roster and kind of stash them a little further down there on my wide receiver room for sure. So there it is, guys. A quick Dynasty Fantasy Report and NFL Rookie Report for Week 9 of the NFL season. We talked the trade deadline ramifications, and then obviously started out the show with the NFL Draft Report. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website, SS Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out our premium content tab. For $9.99, you get access to it all. It is the best way to support the show and help us to continue to do what we do here. If you can't purchase the premium products, please, wherever you listen to the podcast, rate, review, subscribe. Get over to YouTube, just subscribe to the channel. Even just that's a way that just helps us in other ways if you can't purchase the premium notebooks. So on behalf of my sound tech engineer, David Nicano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.